Mad King is dead. Rhaegar lies beneath the ground. Why weren't you there to protect your prince?
Our prince wanted us here.
The greatest swordsman who ever lived died because he was fighting the wrong man. That's the secret hidden inside the Tower of Joy. Not just who Jon Snow's parents are, but the fact that Ser Arthur Dayne, the Sword of the Morning, spent his final moments trying to kill the one person on earth who could save the thing he was guarding. He was winning. He was about to deliver the killing blow. And if he had, the baby inside that tower, Rhaegar's son, the heir to the Iron Throne, the boy who would grow up to unite the living against the dead, would have died. Not from a sword, from neglect, from exposure, from being found by the wrong people in a kingdom that wanted every Targaryen dead. Arthur Dayne was so loyal to his orders that he almost destroyed the very thing his orders existed to protect. Now, to understand why that matters, you need to understand who Arthur Dayne was. Not a good knight, not a great knight. The knight, the one the other legends measured themselves against. So, Ser Arthur Dayne came from House Dayne of Starfall, a Dornish family with an ancient bloodline stretching back thousands of years. His house possessed a sword called Dawn, not Valyrian steel, not castle-forged, but something older and stranger. Dawn was made from the metal of a fallen star. In the books, it's described as pale as milk glass, alive with light. Only a Dane deemed worthy earns the right to wield it, and the man who carries Dawn takes the title Sword of the Morning. Arthur was his generation's Sword of the Morning, and by every account, from his allies, from his enemies, from the man who killed him, he was the greatest fighter to ever hold the title. I mean, consider what the people who knew him actually said. Ned Stark, who fought beside Robert Baratheon through an entire war, who saw every great knight the realm could produce, said this: "The finest knight I ever saw was Ser Arthur Dayne, who fought with a blade called Dawn, forged from the heart of a fallen star. They called him the Sword of the Morning, and he would have killed me but for Howland Reed." That's Ned Stark, a man who does not exaggerate, who does not flatter, who does not waste words, saying Arthur Dayne would have killed him, not might have, would have. Jaime Lannister, who spent his entire career being measured against Arthur, considered him the greatest knight who ever lived. Barristan Selmy, another legendary Kingsguard, was asked by George R.R. Martin himself where he ranked against Arthur. With Dawn, Martin said, Arthur wins. Without it, it's too close to call. Arthur Dayne with Dawn was the single most dangerous human being in the known world. Well, the story that tells you everything about Arthur's character isn't the Tower of Joy. It's the Kingswood Brotherhood. Years before Robert's rebellion, an outlaw band called the Kingswood Brotherhood was terrorizing the Kingswood. The Mad King sent Arthur and a detachment of knights to deal with them. Arthur didn't just hunt the outlaws, he won over the local small folk first, paying for what his men took and bringing their grievances before the king. He dismantled the Brotherhood's support network through kindness before he dismantled them through combat. And when he faced the Smiling Knight, the most feared swordsman in the Brotherhood, a madman who reveled in killing, their duel was legendary. The Smiling Knight's sword was notched and damaged under the weight of Dawn. Arthur could have ended it right there. Instead, he lowered Dawn and let the Smiling Knight pick up a fresh blade. He refused to win because of flawed steel. He gave a killer a second chance at life out of pure chivalric honor. Then he killed him. After the victory, he knighted a young squire named Jaime Lannister, a boy who would grow up to become Arthur's sworn brother in the King's Guard, and eventually the man who killed the king they both served. Look, that detail is the key to everything that happens at the Tower of Joy, because the man who let the Smiling Knight get a new sword is the same man who stood in front of that tower and fought 6 men to the death without retreat, without negotiation, without even considering that there might be a way through this that didn't involve killing. Arthur Dayne's honor wasn't just a trait, it was a prison. He did what he was told, he did it perfectly, and he never once asked whether the order itself made sense. Right? So here's the setup. It's the end of Robert's rebellion. Rhaegar is dead, killed by Robert on the trident, his rubies scattering in the river as his chest caved in under the warhammer. The Mad King is dead, stabbed in the back by Jaime Lannister, the boy Arthur himself had knighted. Elia Martell and her children have been murdered by the Mountain. King's Landing has fallen. The Targaryen dynasty is finished. Every person Arthur Dayne swore to protect is dead or in exile. And Rhaegar's last order to Arthur Dayne was, stay at the Tower of Joy. Guard what's inside. Don't leave. Arthur obeyed. He and Sir Gerald Hightower, the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, stayed at the tower while the world collapsed around them. They had no army, no reinforcements, no ravens, no communication with anyone who could tell them the war was over, and everyone they served was dead. They were two men with white cloaks and swords, guarding a tower in the Red Mountains of Dawn, waiting for a prince whose body was already rotting in the river where Robert left him. Every morning, Arthur woke up and chose to keep following an order that no one alive had the authority to cancel. That's not just loyalty, that's something much closer to faith. Blind, absolute faith that the order was right, that the prince knew what he was doing, that the thing inside this tower was worth dying for, even if Arthur himself might not have known exactly what it was. The thing is, look at the conversation Arthur has with Ned when the Northerners arrive. 6 men ride up, Ned and 5 bannermen, including Howland Reed. Arthur acknowledges Ned. He doesn't draw his swords yet. He talks, and the exchange they have is quietly devastating in what it reveals about both men. Ned says,
I looked for you on the trident.
Arthur says, we weren't there. Hightower cuts in. Your friend the usurper would lie beneath the ground if we had been.
Mad King is dead. Rhaegar lies beneath the ground. Why weren't you there to protect your prince?
Arthur says simply, our prince wanted us here. Ned asks the only question that matters to him.
Where's my sister?
Arthur doesn't answer. Instead, the last thing he says before the swords come out.
I wish you good fortune in the wars to come.
I wish you good fortune in the wars to come. And now it begins. Ned answers, no. Now it ends. Actually, read that exchange one more time. Arthur knows Rhaegar is dead. He knows the Mad King is dead. He knows the war is over and his side lost. And when Ned asks why he wasn't at the Trident, where his presence might have turned the tide, where Rhaegar might have survived, where the entire dynasty might have been saved, Arthur doesn't justify or explain. He says simply, our prince wanted us here. That's it. Rhaegar told him to stay, so he stayed. The most skilled warrior in the realm sat out the decisive battle of the war because his prince told him to guard a tower. He chose a promise over a kingdom. And now, with 6 armed men in front of him and nothing left to fight for except an order from a dead man, Arthur draws his swords and fights anyway, not because he thinks he can win, though he can and almost does, because fighting is all he has left. The order is all he has left. Basically, the fight that follows is the show's most impressive display of individual combat skill. In the books, Arthur wields Dawn alone, a greatsword, pale as milk, alive with light. The show makes a deliberate change. It gives him 2 swords. One is Dawn, the other is unnamed. And the duel wielding is designed to make the audience understand something that the books convey through reputation alone. This man is on a completely different level from everyone around him. In the books, the fighting is described in fragments through Ned's fever dream. In the show, we see every swing, and it's breathtaking. 6 against 2. Ned kills Gerald Hightower early in the fight. Arthur cuts Howland Reed down, or so he thinks. And then it's Arthur against the rest, and he's winning. He moves through them like a force of nature. Every strike is lethal, every parry flows into the next attack, Every step is calculated to keep multiple opponents in front of him while he eliminates them one by one. The choreography isn't flashy, it's efficient. Arthur isn't showing off. He's solving a math problem. Too many enemies, 2 swords, limited time. One by one, Ned's companions fall. Proud Martin Cassell, Jory's father, faithful Theo Wool. Men Ned grew up with, fought beside, trusted with his life, carved apart by a single knight with 2 swords and an unshakable calm. You see, by the time the fight narrows to Arthur versus Ned alone, the outcome isn't in question. Arthur is better. Not marginally better, categorically better. He fights Ned the way a master fights a student, pressing him back, overwhelming his guard, forcing him into increasingly desperate parries. And then Arthur disarms him. Ned's sword goes flying. Arthur stands over him with dawn raised, ready to deliver the killing blow. The greatest knight who ever lived is about to add Ned Stark to his list of victories, and Howland Reed stabs him in the back of the neck. Then Ned finishes him. He cuts him down while Arthur looks him in the eyes. The greatest knight in the history of Westeros, killed by a man he'd already beaten, because someone he never saw coming put a blade where his armor couldn't reach. And after the fighting was done, after Ned climbed the tower and held his sister as she died, he did something that tells you everything about who Ned Stark was. After the war was over, after Robert's coronation, Ned Stark took Dorne and rode south to Starfall. He returned the enemy's sword to the enemy's family. Covered in grief, carrying a secret baby, Ned took a detour to give a dead man's family their heirloom back. Because that's what honor demanded. The same honor that Arthur Dayne died for, Ned Stark lived by. He just understood that honor without pragmatism is a death sentence. Again, Bran's reaction in the vision is the key to the whole scene. He says,
"My father beat him." "No, he did. Heard the story 1,000 times."
"I heard the story 1,000 times. My father beat Sir Arthur Dayne." And the three-eyed raven watches as Bran realizes his father's most famous victory was built on a lie. Ned didn't beat Arthur Dayne. Ned was beaten by Arthur Dayne. Howland Reed saved his life with a knife in the back, and Ned never told anyone the truth. He let the realm believe he defeated the Sword of the Morning in single combat. The most honorable man in Westeros built his most famous achievement on a deception. And that deception had consequences. The story of Ned Stark defeating Arthur Dayne became part of Ned's legend, part of the reason Robert trusted him, part of the reason the Northern Lords followed him, part of the reason he was called South to be Hand of the King. The realm thought Ned was a warrior who could stand toe-to-toe with the deadliest knight in history. The truth is that Ned was a competent swordsman who got outclassed and survived because his friend fought dirty. If the realm had known the truth, would Robert have sent for Ned? Would Cersei have feared him less? Would the entire chain of events that led to Ned's execution have unfolded differently? The lie Arthur's death created, Ned's legend, is one of the invisible engines driving the entire first season. And there's another lie buried in this scene. Ned told the world that Jon Snow was his bastard son. He let his own wife believe he'd been unfaithful. He carried the shame of that lie for 17 years, letting Catelyn hate a boy who was actually her nephew, letting Jon grow up thinking his father was a man who broke his vows. That lie also began at the Tower of Joy, the moment Lyanna said, "Promise me." Ned walked into that tower as a man who'd never told a lie in his life and walked out carrying 2 of them. The lie about Arthur Dayne made Ned a legend. The lie about Jon Snow made him a father, and both lies were born from the same fight on the same day in the same Dornish dust. Now the fandom debates whether Howland Reed's intervention was dishonorable or pragmatic. Arthur fought with honor. He faced his enemies openly, fought them fairly, gave the smiling knight a new sword. Howland Reed is a crannogman from the neck, a people known for guerrilla tactics, poison, nets, and bog warfare. The crannogmen don't fight in tournament lines. They don't swing greatswords. They survive by being invisible and striking when you're not looking. Howland Reed stabbed a man in the back of the neck during a fight that man was clearly winning. By the codes of knightly combat that Arthur lived and died by, it's a disgrace. By the codes of survival that Howland Reed grew up with, it's Tuesday. And that clash of fighting philosophies is the entire thesis of Arthur Dayne's story. The knight fights by rules. Face your opponent. Announce yourself. Let the best man win. The crannogman fights to survive. Strike from the shadows, use the terrain, end it fast. The knight dies. The crannogman lives. The knight's honor gets him killed. The crannogman's pragmatism saves the world. Arthur Dayne believed in a code that said, you face your enemy, you fight with skill, and the better man wins. Howland Reed believed that the better man is the one who walks away. And in the world of Game of Thrones, a world where the Red Wedding happens, where guests are murdered at dinner tables, where honor is a luxury that kills everyone who can afford it, Howland Reed was right, and Ned knew it. That's why he lied. That's why he told the story of beating Arthur Dayne in single combat instead of telling the truth. Because the truth, that Ned survived through a stab in the back, would have been honest, and in Westeros, honest men don't get to write the history books. Dead men don't get to raise Targaryen babies in secret. Ned chose the lie because the lie kept him alive, and alive was the only thing that could keep his promise to Lyanna. You know, and this is the detail that changes everything about the Tower of Joy. Think about what happens after the fight. The three-eyed raven pulls Bran out of the vision before he can see what's inside the tower. Bran protests. He wants to know. He's spent his entire life hearing the story of his father's greatest victory, and he's just watched that story collapse. His father didn't beat Arthur Dayne. His father was saved by a knife in the back. And now, Bran can hear a woman screaming inside the tower, and the old man in the tree won't let him see what's happening. That frustration, that desperate need to know, carries Bran through the rest of the season until the finale, when he finally returns to the tower and sees the truth. Ned enters the tower. He climbs the stairs, and in the second vision, we see what's inside. Lyanna Stark, dying in a bed soaked with blood. She's not a prisoner. She's not a hostage. She just gave birth. And in her arms is a baby, Rhaegar's son. She whispers the baby's name, a name the audience won't fully hear until a season later, Aegon Targaryen. She begs Ned, if Robert finds out, he'll kill him. You know he will. You have to protect him. Promise me, Ned. Promise me. The camera holds on the baby's face and then cuts to adult Jon Snow standing in Winterfell, knowing nothing of who he really is. The most famous reveal in the history of the show, confirming a theory fans had held for 20 years. So, here's the question nobody asks. If Arthur Dayne had won that fight, if he'd killed all 6 Northerners, what would have happened to the baby? Lyanna was already dying. She would have bled out within hours, regardless of who won the sword fight outside. The baby would have been alone in a tower in the Red Mountains of Dawn, with 2 Kingsguard who had no milk, no wet nurse, no supplies, and no way to get the child to safety without being recognized and hunted. And Robert would have hunted them. This is the man who, when he learns Daenerys is pregnant across the Narrow Sea, orders her assassinated, a girl he's never met, carrying a child that hasn't been born yet, on a continent he can't reach. Robert's hatred for the Targaryens is pathological. It's not political calculation, it's personal rage dressed up as policy. He tells Ned in the crypts of Winterfell, standing over Lyanna's tomb, that he still dreams of killing Rhaegar every night. If he had found Rhaegar's son, the child of the man who stole Lyanna, Robert would have crushed that baby's skull the way the mountain crushed Aegon's. Ned knows this. Lyanna knew it too. It's the reason she made him promise. Arthur Dayne was guarding the tower against the one person in the world who would look at a Targaryen baby and see something worth saving instead of something worth destroying. Ned Stark didn't ride to the Tower of Joy to kill a baby. He rode there to find his sister. And when he found her dying with a child in her arms, he did the one thing Arthur should have prayed for. He took the boy home and raised him as his own. The enemy Arthur died trying to stop is the man who fulfilled the mission Arthur was supposed to complete. Technically, Arthur's orders made sense when Rhaegar gave them. Stay here, guard my son and the woman carrying him. Keep them safe until I return from the Trident. But Rhaegar died on the Trident. And with Rhaegar dead, the order became a trap. Arthur was following instructions from a dead prince in a war that was already lost, fighting to prevent the one outcome, Ned Stark reaching Lyanna, that would actually save Rhaegar's child. His loyalty was perfect. His obedience was flawless, and it nearly killed the thing he was trying to protect. And the chain of consequences that flows from Arthur's death is staggering, because Ned takes that baby home and raises him as Jon Snow. Jon grows up as a bastard in Winterfell, unloved by Catelyn, unsure of his place, carrying a name that isn't his. He joins the Night's Watch. He becomes Lord Commander. He unites the wildlings and the Watch. He dies and comes back. He rallies the North against Ramsay Bolton. He bends the knee to Daenerys. He leads the living against the army of the dead. And in the end, it's Jon Snow, Arthur Dayne's orphan, the baby in the tower, the boy who should have died in the Dornish dust, who kills Daenerys and prevents a tyrant from ruling the world. Every single one of those events traces back to a crannogman's knife in a Kingsguard's neck. If Howland Reed doesn't stab Arthur Dayne, Jon dies as a nameless infant. If Jon dies, the Night's Watch falls. If the Watch falls, the wall falls sooner. If the wall falls sooner, there's no one to rally the North. The butterfly effect from the Tower of Joy stretches across every season of the show, and it all begins with the moment the greatest knight in history turned his back to the wrong man. The thing is, that irony runs through the entire scene like a blade through silk. Arthur Dayne was the best. He was honorable, skilled, loyal, disciplined, lethal, everything a knight is supposed to be, and all of those virtues combined made him exactly wrong for this moment. His honor made him fight a man he should have talked to. His skill made the fight last long enough for the situation to become lethal. His loyalty kept him at a tower guarding a dead man's orders. His discipline prevented him from adapting to a world that had changed completely since Rhaegar gave the command. And Howland Reed, small, dirty, fighting from the shadows with a knife, is the reason the entire story of Game of Thrones happens. Without that stab in the back, Ned dies at the Tower of Joy. Jon Snow dies as an unnamed baby in a Dornish tower. There's no king in the north. There's no battle of the bastards. There's no battle between the living and the dead. The Night King wins. A crannogman's dishonor saved the world. A knight's honor almost ended it. Well, there's a final parallel that connects Arthur Dayne's arc to the entire show. Jaime Lannister, the boy Arthur knighted, the man who inherited Arthur's white cloak, killed the Mad King with a stab in the back. The realm called him Kingslayer for it, and the dishonor haunted him for decades. But Jaime killed Aerys to save 500,000 people from wildfire. He committed a dishonorable act for an honorable reason, and the world punished him for it. Howland Reed committed the same act, a blade from behind, for the same reason, to save someone who needed saving. 2 stabs in the back. 2 acts the codes of knightly honor can't forgive, and both of them saved the world. Arthur Dayne died the way he lived, facing his enemy, holding his sword, following his orders to the letter. He was the perfect knight, and the perfect knight was exactly the wrong man for the moment the world needed someone willing to break the rules. His honor made him blind to the possibility that the enemy at his gate was actually his mission's best hope. His loyalty made him deaf to a world that had changed completely since Rhaegar gave the command. And his skill, the greatest the world had ever seen, made him dangerous enough to nearly destroy the one thing he was sworn to protect. So the next time you watch Arthur Dayne spin those two swords through 6 men like they're standing still, every movement precise, every kill elegant, every step a demonstration of why the entire realm feared the sword of the morning, remember what's happening inside the tower behind him. A woman is dying, a baby is crying, and the man fighting to keep everyone out is the reason the baby almost doesn't survive. The greatest knight who ever lived lost because a small, dirty man with a knife understood something Arthur never could, that sometimes the most honorable thing you can do is fight without any.